Chapter 18 of De Sophisticis Elenchis by Aristotle. Translated by W. A. Pickard, Cambridge. Chapter 18. Inasmuch as a proper solution is an exposure of false reasoning, showing on what kind of question the falsity depends, and whereas, false reasoning, has a double meaning, for it is used either if a false conclusion has been proved, or if there is only an apparent proof and no real one, there must be both the kind of solution just described and also the correction of a merely apparent proof, so as to show upon which of the questions the appearance depends. Thus it comes about that one solves arguments that are properly reasoned by demolishing them, whereas one solves merely apparent arguments by drawing distinctions. Again, inasmuch as of arguments that are properly reasoned, some have a true and others a false conclusion, those that are false in respect of their conclusion it is possible to solve in two ways, for it is possible both by demolishing one of the premises asked, and by showing that the conclusion is not the real state of the case. Those, on the other hand, that are false in respect of their premises can be solved only by a demolition of one of them, for the conclusion is true, so that those who wish to solve an argument should in the first place look and see if it is properly reasoned, or is unreasoned, and next, whether the conclusion be true or false, in order that we may effect the solution, either by drawing some distinction or by demolishing something, and demolishing it either in this way or in that, as was laid down before. There is a very great deal of difference between solving an argument when being subjected to questions, and when not, for to foresee traps is difficult, whereas to see them at one's leisure is easier. Chapter 19. Of the refutations, then, that depend upon ambiguity and amphiboly, some contain some question with more than one meaning, while others contain a conclusion bearing a number of senses, e.g. in the proof that, speaking of the silent, is possible, the conclusion has a double meaning, while in the proof that, he who knows does not understand what he knows, one of the questions contains an amphiboly. Also, the double-edged saying is true in one context, but not in another. It means something that is, and something that is not. Whenever, then, the many senses lie in the conclusion, no refutation takes place unless the sophist secures as well the contradiction of the conclusion he means to prove, e.g. in the proof that, seeing of the blind, is possible, for without the contradiction there was no refutation. Whenever, on the other hand, the many senses lie in the questions, there is no necessity to begin by denying the double-edged premise, for this was not the goal of the argument, but only its support. At the start, then, one should reply with regard to an ambiguity, whether of a term or of a phrase, in this manner, that, in one sense it is so, and in another not so, as, e.g., that, speaking of the silent, is in one sense possible, but in another not possible. Also, that in one sense, one should do what must needs be done, but not in another, for, what must needs be, bears a number of senses. If, however, the ambiguity escapes one should correct it at the end by making an addition to the question, is speaking of the silent possible? No, but to speak of A while he is silent is possible. Also, in cases which contain the ambiguity in their premises, one should reply in like manner, do people then not understand what they know? Yes, but not those who know it in the manner described. For it is not the same thing to say that, those who know cannot understand what they know, and to say that, those who know something in this particular manner cannot do so. In general, too, even though he draws his conclusion in a quite unambiguous manner, one should contend that what he has negated is not the fact which one has asserted, but only its name, and that therefore there is no refutation. Chapter 20. It is evident also how one should solve those refutations that depend upon the division and combination of words. For if the expression means something different when divided and when combined, as soon as one's opponent draws his conclusion, one should take the expression in the contrary way. All such expressions as the following depend upon the combination or division of the words. Was X being beaten with that with which you saw him being beaten? And, did you see him being beaten with that with which he was being beaten? This fallacy has also in it an element of amphiboly in the questions, but it really depends upon combination, for the meaning that depends upon the division of the words is not really a double meaning, for the expression when divided is not the same, unless also the word that is pronounced according to its breathing, as eros and eros, is a case of double meaning. In writing, indeed, a word is the same whenever it is written of the same letters and in the same manner, and even there people nowadays put marks at the side to show the pronunciation, but the spoken words are not the same. Accordingly, an expression that depends upon division is not an ambiguous one. It is evident also that not all refutations depend upon ambiguity, as some people say they do. The answerer, then, must divide the expression, for I saw a man being beaten with my eyes is not the same as to say I saw a man being beaten with my eyes. Also, there is the argument of Euthydemus proving then you know now in Sicily that there are triremes in Piraeus. And again, can a good man who is a cobbler be bad? No. But a good man may be a bad cobbler, therefore a good cobbler will be bad. Again, things the knowledge of which is good are good things to learn, aren't they? Yes. The knowledge, however, of evil is good, therefore evil is a good thing to know. Yes, but you see, evil is both evil and a thing to learn, so that evil is an evil thing to learn, although the knowledge of evils is good. Again, is it true to say in the present moment that you are born? Yes. Then you are born in the present moment. No, the expression as divided has a different meaning, for it is true to say in the present moment that you are born, but not you are born in the present moment. Again, could you do what you can, and as you can? Yes. But when not harping, you have the power to harp, and therefore you could harp when not harping. No, he has not the power to harp while not harping, merely when he is not doing it, he has the power to do it. Some people solve this last refutation in another way as well, for they say, if he has granted that he can do anything in the way he can, still it does not follow that he can harp when not harping, for it has not been granted that he will do anything in every way in which he can, and it is not the same thing, to do a thing in the way he can, and, to do it in every way in which he can. But evidently they do not solve it properly, for of arguments that depend upon the same point the solution is the same, whereas this will not fit all cases of the kind, nor yet all ways of putting the questions. It is valid against the questioner, but not against his argument. Chapter 21. Accentuation gives rise to no fallacious arguments, either as written or as spoken, except perhaps some few that might be made up, e.g. the following argument. Quote, is ukatalis a house? Close quote. Quotes, yes. Quote, is then ukatalis the negation of katalis? Close quote. Quotes, yes. Quote, but you said that ukatalis is a house, therefore the house is a negation. Close quote. How one should solve this is clear, for the word does not mean the same when spoken with an acuter and when spoken with a graver accent. Chapter 22. It is clear also how one must meet those fallacies that depend on the identical expression of things that are not identical, seeing that we are in possession of the kinds of predications. For the one man, say, has granted, when asked, that a term denoting a substance does not belong as an attribute, while the other has shown that some attribute belongs which is in the category of relation or of quantity, but is usually thought to denote a substance because of its expression, e.g. in the following argument, quote, is it possible to be doing and to have done the same thing at the same time? Close quote. Quotes, no. Quote, but, you see, it is surely possible to be seeing and to have seen the same thing at the same time, and in the same aspect. Close quote. Again, quote, is any mode of passivity a mode of activity? Close quote. Quotes, no. Quote, then, quote, he is cut, close quote. Quote, he is burnt, close quote. Quote, he is struck by some sensible object, close quote, are alike in expression, and all denote some form of passivity, while again, quote, to say, close quote, quote, to run, close quote, quote, to see, close quote, are like one another in expression. But you see, quote, to see, close quote, is surely a form of being struck by a sensible object. Therefore, it is at the same time a form of passivity and of activity. Close quote. Suppose, however, that in that case any one, after granting that it is not possible to do and to have done the same thing in the same time, were to say that it is possible to see and to have seen it, still he has not yet been refuted. Suppose him to say that, quote, to see, close quote, is not a form of, quotes, doing, activity, but of, quotes, passivity. For this question is required as well, though he is supposed by the listener to have already granted it. When he granted that, quote, to cut, close quote, is a form of present, and, quote, to have cut, close quote, a form of past activity, and so on with the other things that have a like expression. For the listener adds the rest by himself, thinking the meaning to be alike, whereas really the meaning is not alike, though it appears to be so because of the expression. The same thing happens here as happens in cases of ambiguity. For in dealing with ambiguous expressions, the tyro in argument supposes the sophist to have negated the fact which he, the tyro, affirmed, and not merely the name, whereas there still wants the question whether in using the ambiguous term he had a single meaning in view. For if he grants that that was so, the refutation will be effected. Like the above are also the following arguments. It is asked if a man has lost what he once had, and afterwards has not, for a man will no longer have 10 dice, even though he has only lost 1 die. No, rather it is that he has lost what he had before, and has not now, but there is no necessity for him to have lost as much or as many things as he has not now. So then he asks the questions as to what he has, and draws the conclusion as to the whole number that he has, for 10 is a number. If then he had asked, to begin with, whether a man, no longer having the number of things he once had, has lost the whole number, no one would have granted it, but would have said, either the whole number, or one of them. Also, there is the argument that a man may give what he has not got, for he has not got only one die. No, rather it is that he has given not what he had not got, but in a manner in which he had not got it, viz. Just the one. For the word only does not signify a particular substance or quality or number, but a manner of relation, e.g. that it is not coupled with any other. It is therefore just as if he had asked, could a man give what he has not got, and on being given the answer, no, were to ask if a man could give a thing quickly when he had not got it quickly, and on this being granted, were to conclude that a man could give what he had not got. It is quite evident that he has not proved his point, for to give quickly is not to give a thing, but to give in a certain manner, and a man could certainly give a thing in a manner in which he has not got it, e.g. he might have got it with pleasure and give it with pain. Like these are also all arguments of the following kind. Could a man strike a blow with a hand which he has not got, or see with an eye which he has not got, for he has not got only one eye. Some people solve this case where a man has more than one eye, or more than one of anything else, by saying also that he has only one. Others also solve it as they solve the refutation of the view that what a man has, he has received, for A gave only one vote, and certainly B, they say, has only one vote from A. Others, again, proceed by demolishing straightway the proposition asked, and admitting that it is quite possible to have what one has not received, e.g. to have received sweet wine, but then, owing to its going bad in the course of receipt, to have it sour. But as was said also above, all these persons direct their solutions against the man, not against his argument. For if this were a genuine solution, then, suppose any one to grant the opposite, he could find no solution, just as happens in other cases, e.g. suppose the true solution to be, so-and-so is partly true and partly not, then, if the answerer grants the expression without any qualification, the sophist's conclusion follows. If, on the other hand, the conclusion does not follow, then that could not be the true solution, and what we say in regard to the foregoing examples is that, even if all the sophist's premises be granted, still no proof is effected. Moreover, the following two belong to this group of arguments. If something be in writing, did someone write it? Yes. But it is now in writing that you are seated, a false statement, though it was true at the time when it was written. Therefore, the statement that was written is at the same time false and true. But this is fallacious, for the falsity or truth of a statement or opinion indicates not a substance but a quality. For the same account applies to the case of an opinion as well. Again, is what a learner learns what he learns? Yes. But suppose some one learns slow, quick, then this, the sophist's words, denote not what the learner learns, but how he learns it. Also, does a man tread upon what he walks through? Yes. But X walks through a whole day. No, rather the words denote not what he walks through, but when he walks, just as when any one uses the words to drink the cup, he denotes not what he drinks, but the vessel out of which he drinks. Also, is it either by learning or by discovery that a man knows what he knows? Yes. But suppose that of a pair of things he has discovered one and learned the other, the pair is not known to him by either method. No. What he knows means every single thing he knows individually, but this does not mean all the things he knows collectively. Again, there is the proof that there is a third man distinct from man and from individual men, but that is a fallacy, for man, and indeed every general predicate, denotes not an individual substance, but a particular quality, or the being related to something in a particular manner, or something of that sort. Likewise also in the case of Coriscus and Coriscus the musician, there is the problem, are they the same or different? For the one denotes an individual substance, and the other a quality, so that it cannot be isolated, though it is not the isolation which creates the third man, but the admission that it is an individual substance. For man cannot be an individual substance, as Callias is. Nor is the case improved one whit even if one were to call the element he has isolated not an individual substance, but a quality, for there still will be the one beside the many, just as man was. It is evident, then, that one must not grant that what is a common predicate applying to a class universally is an individual substance, but must say that it denotes either a quality, or a relation, or a quantity, or something of that kind. Chapter 23. It is a general rule, in dealing with arguments that depend on language, that the solution always follows the opposite of the point on which the argument turns. E.g., if the argument depends upon combination, then the solution consists in division; if upon division, then in combination. Again, if it depends on an acute accent, the solution is a grave accent; if on a grave accent, it is an acute. If it depends on ambiguity, one can solve it by using the opposite term, e.g., if you find yourself calling something inanimate, despite your previous denial that it was so, show in what sense it is alive. If, on the other hand, one has declared it to be inanimate, and the sophist has proved it to be animate, say how it is inanimate. Likewise also in a case of amphiboly. If the argument depends on likeness of expression, the opposite will be the solution. Could a man give what he has not got? No, not what he has not got, but he could give it in a way in which he has not got it, e.g., one die by itself. Does a man know, either by learning or by discovery, each thing that he knows singly? Yes, but not the things that he knows collectively. Also, a man treads perhaps on anything he walks through, but not on the time he walks through. Likewise also in the case of the other examples. End of chapter 23. Chapter 24 of De Sophisticus Elenchi by Aristotle, translated by W. A. Pickard, Cambridge. Chapter 24. In dealing with arguments that depend on accident, one and the same solution meets all cases. For since it is indeterminate when an attribute should be ascribed to a thing, in cases where it belongs to the accident of the thing, and since in some cases it is generally agreed and people admit that it belongs, while in others they deny that it need belong, we should therefore, as soon as the conclusion has been drawn, say in answer to them all alike, that there is no need for such an attribute to belong. One must, however, be prepared to adduce an example of the kind of attribute meant. All arguments such as the following depend upon accident. Quote, do you know what I am going to ask you? Close quote. Quote, do you know the man who is approaching? Close quote. Or, quote, the man in the mask? Close quote. Quote, is the statue your work of art? Close quote. Or, quote, is the dog your father? Close quote. Quote, is the product of a small number with a small number a small number? Close quote. For it is evident in all these cases that there is no necessity for the attribute which is true of the thing's accident to be true of the thing as well. For only to things that are indistinguishable and one in essence is it generally agreed that all the same attributes belong. Whereas in the case of a good thing, to be good is not the same as to be going to be the subject of a question, nor in the case of a man approaching or wearing a mask is, quote, to be approaching, close quote, the same thing as, quote, to be Coriscus, close quote. So that suppose I know Coriscus, but do not know the man who is approaching, it still isn't the case that I both know and do not know the same man. Nor again, if this is mine, and is also a work of art, is it therefore my work of art, but my property or thing, or something else. The solution is after the same manner in the other cases as well. Some solve these refutations by demolishing the original proposition asked, for they say that it is possible to know and not to know the same thing, only not in the same respect. Accordingly, when they don't know the man who is coming towards them, but do know Coriscus, they assert that they do know and don't know the same object, but not in the same respect. Yet, as we have already remarked, the correction of arguments that depend upon the same point ought to be the same, whereas this one will not stand if one adopts the same principle in regard not to knowing something, but to being or to being in a certain state. E.g., suppose that x is a father and is also yours. For if in some cases this is true, and it is possible to know and not to know the same thing, yet with that case the solution stated has nothing to do. Certainly there is nothing to prevent the same argument from having a number of flaws, but it is not the exposition of any and every fault that constitutes a solution. For it is possible for a man to show that a false conclusion has been proved, but not to show on what it depends, e.g. in the case of Zeno's argument to prove that motion is impossible, so that even if anyone were to try to establish that this doctrine is an impossible one, he still is mistaken, and even if he proved his case 10,000 times over, still this is no solution of Zeno's argument. For the solution was all along an exposition of false reasoning, showing on what its falsity depends. If then he has not proved his case, or is trying to establish even a true proposition, or a false one, in a false manner, to point this out is a true solution. Possibly, indeed, the present suggestion may very well apply in some cases. But in these cases, at any rate, not even this would be generally agreed, for he knows both that Coriscus is Coriscus, and that the approaching figure is approaching. To know and not to know the same thing is generally thought to be possible, when, e.g., one knows that x is white, but does not realize that he is musical, for in that way he does know and not know the same thing, though not in the same respect. But as to the approaching figure and Coriscus, he knows both that it is approaching and that he is Coriscus. A like mistake to that of those whom we have mentioned is that of those who solve the proof that every number is a small number. For if, when the conclusion is not proved, they pass this over and say that a conclusion has been proved and is true, on the ground that every number is both great and small, they make a mistake. Some people also use the principle of ambiguity to solve the aforesaid reasonings, e.g. the proof that, quote, x is your father, close quote, or quotes son, or quotes slave. Yet it is evident that if the appearance of a proof depends upon a plurality of meanings, the term or the expression in question ought to bear a number of literal senses, whereas no one speaks of A as being quote, B's child close quote, in the literal sense, if B is the child's master. But the combination depends upon accident. Quote, is A yours? Close quote. Quotes, yes. Quote, and is A child? Close quote. Quotes, yes. Quote, then the child A is yours, close quote, because he happens to be both yours and a child, but it is not one of the evils. But in that case, the apparently different meanings seem to depend on whether the term is used relatively or absolutely. Quote, yet it is conceivably possible to find a real ambiguity in the phrase, quote, something of evils is good, close quote, close quote. Perhaps, but not with regard to the phrase in question. It would occur more nearly, suppose that, quote, a servant is good of the wicked, close quote, though perhaps it is not quite found even there. For a thing may be, quotes, good, and be, quotes, X's, without being at the same time, quote, X's good, close quote. Nor is the saying that, quote, man is of the animals, close quote, a phrase with a number of meanings. For a phrase does not become possessed of a number of meanings, merely suppose we express it elliptically, for we express, quote, give me the Iliad, close quote, by quoting half a line of it, e.g., quote, give me, quote, sing goddess of the wrath, close quote, close quote. Chapter 25. Those arguments which depend upon an expression that is valid of a particular thing, or in a particular respect, or place, or manner, or relation, and not valid absolutely, should be solved by considering the conclusion in relation to its contradictory, to see if any of these things can possibly have happened to it. For it is impossible for contraries and opposites, and an affirmative and a negative, to belong to the same thing absolutely. There is, however, nothing to prevent each from belonging in a particular respect or relation or manner, or to prevent one of them from belonging in a particular respect and the other absolutely, so that if this one belongs absolutely and that one in a particular respect, there is as yet no refutation. This is a feature one has to find in the conclusion by examining it in comparison with its contradictory. All arguments of the following kind have this feature. Quote, is it possible for what is not to be? Close quote. Quotes, no. Quote, but you see, it is something despite its not being. Close quote. Likewise also, being will not be, for it will not be some particular form of being. Quote, is it possible for the same man at the same time to be a keeper and a breaker of his oath? Close quote. Quote, can the same man at the same time both obey and disobey the same man? Close quote. Or isn't it the case that being something in particular and being are not the same? On the other hand, not being, even if it be something, need not also have absolute, quotes, being as well. Nor if a man keeps his oath in this particular instance, or in this particular respect, is he bound also to be a keeper of oaths absolutely. But he who swears that he will break his oath, and then breaks it, keeps this particular oath only. He is not a keeper of his oath, nor is the disobedient man, quotes, obedient, though he obeys one particular command. The argument is similar also as regards the problem whether the same man can at the same time say what is both false and true, but it appears to be a troublesome question, because it is not easy to see in which of the two connections the word absolutely is to be rendered with true or with false. There is, however, nothing to prevent it from being false absolutely, though true in some particular respect or relation, i.e. being true in some things, though not true absolutely. Likewise also in cases of some particular relation, and place, and time. For all arguments of the following kind depend upon this. Is health or wealth a good thing? Yes. But to the fool, who does not use it aright, it is not a good thing. Therefore it is both good and not good. Is health or political power a good thing? Yes. But sometimes it is not particularly good. Therefore the same thing is both good and not good to the same man. Or rather, there is nothing to prevent a thing, though good absolutely, being not good to a particular man, or being good to a particular man, and yet not good now, or here. Is that which the prudent man would not wish an evil? Yes. But to get rid of, he would not wish the good. Therefore the good is an evil. But that is a mistake, for it is not the same thing to say, the good is an evil, and to get rid of the good is an evil. Likewise also the argument of the thief is mistaken, for it is not the case that if the thief is an evil thing, acquiring things is also evil. What he wishes, therefore, is not what is evil, but what is good, for to acquire something good is good. Also, disease is an evil thing, but not to get rid of disease. Is the just preferable to the unjust, and what takes place justly to what takes place unjustly? Yes. But to be put to death unjustly is preferable. Is it just that each should have his own? Yes. But whatever decisions a man comes to on the strength of his personal opinion, even if it be a false opinion, are valid in law. Therefore the same result is both just and unjust. Also, should one decide in favour of him who says what is just, or of him who says what is unjust? The former. But, you see, it is just for the injured party also to say fully the things he has suffered, and these were unjust. But these are fallacies, for because to suffer a thing unjustly is preferable, unjust ways are not therefore preferable to just, but absolutely just ways are preferable, though in this particular case the unjust may very well be better than the just. Also, to have one's own is just, while to have what is another's is not just. All the same, the decision in question may very well be a just decision, whatever it be that the opinion of the man who gave the decision supports, for because it is just in this particular case, or in this particular manner, it is not also just absolutely. Likewise also, though things are unjust, there is nothing to prevent the speaking of them being just. For because to speak of things is just, there is no necessity that the things should be just, any more than because to speak of things be of use, the things need be of use. Likewise also in the case of what is just, so that it is not the case that because the things spoken of are unjust, the victory goes to him who speaks unjust things. For he speaks of things that are just to speak of, though absolutely, i.e. to suffer, they are unjust. Chapter 26. Refutations that depend on the definition of a refutation must, according to the plan sketched above, be met by comparing together the conclusion with its contradictory, and seeing that it shall involve the same attribute in the same respect and relation and manner and time. If this additional question be put at the start, you should not admit that it is impossible for the same thing to be both double and not double, but grant that it is possible, only not in such a way as was agreed to constitute a refutation of your case. All the following arguments depend upon a point of that kind. Quote, does a man who knows A to be A know the thing called A? Close quote. And in the same way, quote, is one who is ignorant that A is A ignorant of the thing called A? Close quote. Quotes, yes. Quote, but one who knows that Coriscus is Coriscus might be ignorant of the fact that he is musical, so that he both knows and is ignorant of the same thing. Close quote. Quote, is a thing 4 cubits long greater than a thing 3 cubits long? Close quote. Quotes, yes. Quote, but a thing might grow from 3 to 4 cubits in length. Close quote. Now, what is, quotes, greater is greater than a, quotes, less. Accordingly, the thing in question will be both greater and less than itself in the same respect. Chapter 27. As to refutations that depend on begging and assuming the original point to be proved, suppose the nature of the question to be obvious. One should not grant it, even though it be a view generally held, but should tell him the truth. Suppose, however, that it escapes one, then, thanks to the badness of arguments of that kind, one should make one's error recoil upon the questioner, and say that he has brought no argument. For a refutation must be proved independently of the original point. Secondly, one should say that the point was granted under the impression that he intended not to use it as a premise, but to reason against it in the opposite way from that adopted in refutations on side issues. Chapter 28. Also, those refutations that bring one to their conclusion through the consequent you should show up in the course of the argument itself. The mode in which consequences follow is twofold. For the argument either is that as the universal follows on its particular, as e.g. quotes, animal follows from quotes, man, so does the particular on its universal. For the claim is made that if A is always found with B, then B also is always found with A, or else it proceeds by way of the opposites of the terms involved. For if A follows B, it is claimed that A's opposite will follow B's opposite. On this latter claim the argument of Melissus also depends, for he claims that because that which has come to be has a beginning, that which has not come to be has none, so that if the heaven has not come to be, it is also eternal. But that is not so, for the sequence is vice versa. Chapter 29. In the case of any refutations whose reasoning depends on some addition, look and see if upon its subtraction the absurdity follows none the less, and then if so, the answerer should point this out, and say that he granted the addition not because he really thought it, but for the sake of the argument, whereas the questioner has not used it for the purpose of his argument at all. Chapter 30. To meet those refutations which make several questions into one should draw a distinction between them straight away at the start. For a question must be single to which there is a single answer, so that one must not affirm or deny several things of one thing, nor one thing of many, but one of one. But just as in the case of ambiguous terms, an attribute belongs to a term sometimes in both its senses, and sometimes in neither, so that a simple answer does one, as it happens, no harm despite the fact that the question is not simple, so it is in these cases of double questions too. Whenever, then, the several attributes belong to the one subject, or the one to the many, The man who gives a simple answer encounters no obstacle, even though he has committed this mistake. But whenever an attribute belongs to one subject, but not to the other, or there is a question of a number of attributes belonging to a number of subjects, and in one sense both belong to both, while in another sense, again, they do not, then there is trouble, so that one must be aware of this. Thus, e.g., in the following arguments, supposing A to be good and B evil, you will, if you give a single answer about both, be compelled to say that it is true to call these good, and that it is true to call them evil, and likewise to call them neither good nor evil, for each of them has not each character, so that the same thing will be both good and evil, and neither good nor evil. Also, since everything is the same as itself, and different from anything else, inasmuch as the man who answers double questions simply can be made to say that several things are the same, not as other things, but as themselves, and also that they are different from themselves, it follows that the same things must be both the same as and different from themselves. Moreover, if what is good becomes evil while what is evil is good, then they must both become two. So of two unequal things, each being equal to itself, it will follow that they are both equal and unequal to themselves. Now these refutations fall into the province of other solutions as well, for both and all have more than one meaning, so that the resulting affirmation and denial of the same thing does not occur, except verbally, and this is not what we meant by a refutation. But it is clear that if there be not put a single question on a number of points, but the answerer has affirmed or denied one attribute only of one subject only, the absurdity will not come to pass. End of chapter 30.